Right now, without even realizing it, your brain is doing something it has been doing since the first second you were born. Looking, not at a face, not at eyes, not at hands. Lower. And here's the part that should genuinely embarrass you, and scientists and evolution all at the same time. Nobody has a clean explanation for why. We have sent rovers to Mars. We have mapped the human genome. We decoded the structure of a protein that took 50 years to crack. And we still cannot fully explain why your brain is obsessed with a pair of fat deposits on someone's chest. This is that story, and it is so much weirder than you think. Let's start with the one thing everyone assumes is the answer, and it's wrong. The most popular explanation is this: breasts exist to feed babies, men find them attractive because they signal fertility, and that is that simple, clean, tidy, evolution sorted. Except here's the problem. Breast size has almost nothing to do with how much milk a woman produces. Zero, basically none. The milk-producing tissue inside a breast, the glandular tissue that actually does the job, is roughly the same across almost all women regardless of cup size. What varies is fat. The size you see from the outside is largely just adipose tissue, the same stuff cushioning your organs right now. A woman with small breasts and a woman with large breasts can breastfeed equally well. So if breast size doesn't reliably indicate lactation ability, then the whole they evolved to signal nursing capacity story falls apart. Which means you have been staring at fat for evolutionary reasons that are still being argued about in academic journals. You're welcome. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because breasts are weird, not just culturally weird, biologically weird. Every other primate on Earth only develops visible breast tissue during pregnancy and nursing. Chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, the closest animals to you on this planet, when they're not pregnant, their chests are flat. Only one animal on Earth develops permanent, enlarged breasts at puberty, years before pregnancy, that stay for life, regardless of whether a pregnancy ever happens. That animal is you, well, half of you. This is unusual enough that evolutionary biologists have spent decades arguing about why it happened at all. The leading theory isn't that breasts evolved for men, it's that they evolved as a side effect of something else entirely and then got co-opted. Here's what that means. At puberty, the female body undergoes a dramatic surge in estrogen, fat redistributes, hips widen, and breast tissue expands, pulling stored fat into the chest. This isn't directly about attracting anyone. It's about energy storage, hormonal development, and signaling that the body has reached reproductive maturity. The breasts showed up because the hormones showed up, and then your brain noticed. This is the part that actually explains everything. Breasts were a visual cue, but not a cue for fertility in the narrow sense. They're a cue for something more basic. Adult female, not a child, not an elderly woman, past reproductive years. An adult, sexually mature female. Think about the problem your ancestors faced, concealed ovulation. Unlike almost every other primate, human women show almost no external sign of when they're ovulating. No swelling, no color change, no scent strong enough to rely on. Nothing that says clearly right now, today, this is the window. So natural selection needed something else, something stable, something that said this person is an adult, they have been through puberty, they are in the reproductive range. Breasts do that. They don't tell you this week's odds, they tell you the basic category. And for a brain running on pattern recognition and millions of years of selective pressure, the basic category is enough to start the machinery running. Now, here's where the science gets genuinely dark. Because once that machinery starts, it doesn't consult you. Eye tracking studies where researchers record exactly what your eyes do when they look at a picture without telling you consistently show the same thing. Men's eyes go to breasts early and often within the first half, second, before conscious thought, before any decision is made. And it doesn't stop there. Brain imaging studies show that sexual visual stimuli light up a whole cascade of regions inside the brain. The amygdala, which flags things as important, the hypothalamus, which drives basic biological urges, the ventral striatum, which is the same reward region that activates when you win money, eat, food you love, or hear a song that gives you chills. The same circuit that makes you crave a donut is the same circuit that runs this. Dopamine is involved. Of course it is. Dopamine doesn't actually create pleasure. That's the myth. What dopamine does is create wanting. It is the chemical of anticipation, of incentive, of I need to keep going toward that thing. Your brain doesn't experience breasts and feel content. It experiences breasts and starts pulling you toward them like a magnet. And here's the part nobody tells you. This isn't a glitch. It isn't a bug left in from some earlier version of the software. It is the system working exactly as designed. But then why doesn't everyone's brain do it the same way? Because it doesn't, not even close. Men under financial stress consistently rate larger breasts as more attractive than men in stable conditions. Run the same study in a wealthy population versus an economically insecure one, and the preferences shift. Run it on full versus hungry men, same shift. Hungry men prefer larger breasts, The researchers who found this believe it connects to a deep brain association between large fat stores and resource abundance. When your brain registers scarcity, it recalibrates what looks desirable to compensate. When you're secure, the preference softens. You think you have a type? You don't. Your type changes based on whether you ate lunch. Cultural exposure modifies the response too. Men who have been raised in environments where women never covered their chests don't show dramatically different arousal responses than men raised in cultures where breasts are always covered. The common theory that breasts are exciting because they're hidden doesn't hold up. Researchers studied this directly, comparing generations of men in Papua New Guinea before and after covering norms changed. The attraction didn't depend on the taboo, which means the taboo didn't create the attraction. The brain was already there. Culture just shapes which specific features it fixates on. Here is something that gets left out of almost every version of this conversation. Nipple stimulation activates the same region of the sensory cortex as genital stimulation. Literally, the same area of your brain that processes touch in one location also processes touch in the other. This was shown in an fMRI study where researchers mapped sensation across the body onto the cortex. When they stimulated the nipple, the signal didn't just land in the chest region. It lit up the same cortical zone as stimulation further south. The brain has wired these regions together. This is why breasts are not just a visual stimulus for attraction. They are part of the physical architecture of sexual response, both for the person whose breasts they are and to some extent for the person interacting with them. The tactile experience feeds back into the same arousal system the visual cue started. The brain is doing two things at once, running visual pattern recognition and wiring up physical sensation pathways, and it uses the same hardware for both. So what is the actual answer? Here is the most defensible synthesis science currently has. Human females develop permanent breasts because of hormonal changes at puberty, not directly because of male preference. Those breasts became a reliable visual signal of adult female status. That signal was picked up by male brains running general mate assessment systems that were already built to attend to female bodies. Dopamine attached wanting to the signal, oxytocin attached bonding to the physical experience. Cultural learning then layered preferences about size, shape, and proportions over the top of a baseline that was already there. What you are experiencing when you notice a woman's chest is not one thing. It is 5 or 6 systems firing in sequence, each one handed off to the next, and the total result arriving in your awareness as a simple, clean feeling that looks like preference. It isn't preference, it's plumbing, and the plumbing is very, very old. Here is the final piece, and it is the one most people never hear. The most consistent cross-cultural finding isn't about size at all. It's about age cues. Across every culture studied, the single strongest predictor of rated attractiveness wasn't large breasts or small breasts. It was non-ptotic breasts, firm, upright, showing no signs of age or extensive nursing history. Which means what your brain is actually reading underneath all the cultural noise, underneath the preferences you think you have, is young, reproductively viable, not how big, how old. You thought you had a preference for a physical feature. You actually have a clock. Your brain is reading time off someone's body, estimating reproductive window remaining, and firing an attraction signal based on the result. You aren't attracted to breasts. You're attracted to youth dressed up as a physical feature laundered through dopamine, wrapped in culture, and handed to you as a feeling that seems like it's yours. It isn't. It's been running since before your ancestors had a word for it, and now every time you notice, you'll know exactly what that feeling actually is. You're welcome, and I'm sorry,